Brilliant ideas, powered by Hyundai Motor.
The contemporary art world is vibrant and booming like never before. It's a 21st century phenomenon, a global industry in its own right. Brilliant Ideas looks at the artists at the heart of this. They have a unique power to inspire, astonish, provoke, and shock. Artists like Zhang Huan, emerging out of Beijing's avant-garde movement in the 1990s, Zhang Huan bestrides the contemporary art world as a global icon in his own right.
我必须把对世界、对现实的一种无奈的一种力量，反馈到身体中，反馈到精神中。
He burst onto the public's imagination with daring performance pieces that tested the limits of human endurance.
There's a pathos to what he's done. It's certainly not weak work. It's not for the faint-hearted.
He doesn't belong to this intellectual group of artists who seeks new philosophical ideas. He's actually an inventor.
Now based in his vast studio complex in Shanghai, the largest of its kind in China, Zhang Huan has evolved into a multifaceted artist, his new artworks taking on a scale that is invariably larger than life.
There are some artists, who are just like an artist by force of personality. And I think that Zhang Huan has that force of personality.
我出生在中国的地处中原的河南安阳，我是一个野生的东西，一下关到我一个屋子里，我没有专注能力，所以就什么也学不好。所以我从事艺术的一句话是：因为其他都做不好，什么都不行，只能从事艺术。
One interesting thing about him is that he's actually, unlike so many of the important artists in China, he's not a product of the elite academy system. He was actually a high school art teacher in Henan province who came to Beijing basically on a teacher's training program. And at that point, discovered this world of art.
But shortly after enrolling in Beijing's Central Academy of Fine Arts, Zhang Huan grew tired of its classical syllabus. He chose instead to rebel and experiment, a move that would ultimately get him expelled.
因为在大学里边已经学了很多苏联的、俄罗斯的这种教育系统，但是很快我们就厌倦了这些。有一次，学校的最权威的，在中国最权威的教授，在评我们的作品的时候，就点出一幅画，什么也看的什么都看不出来是什么东西。这个先生说：“你已经不适合在这儿了，你可以回家了，让我走。”所以那个时候我开始，为什么不自己找一个空间，开始自己创作呢？
Zhang Huan settled among other struggling artists in Beijing's East Village, where he would discover a manner of expressing himself that would eventually turn him into a superstar. Performance art, using his own body as the brush and canvas.
I met Zhang Huan in 1993 in Beijing. And at that time, he had just done his first performance works. You can go back to something that was very raw, and that the power of what they were doing is in that rawness. It was in that absolute kind of like direct approach to making art.
那么这种方式呢，我觉得特别直接，因为它有身体有行为。那么第二呢，做这种行为艺术呢，其实也是很省钱，就是你做就可以了。
The first piece of work that would place him on the artistic map was 12 square meters. Zhang Huan slathered himself in honey and fish oil and sat for over an hour in a public toilet as flies swarmed all over his naked body.
12平米是一个村子里边的公共厕所，它的空间叫12平方米。一进这个厕所呢，无数只的上万只苍蝇就哗飞过来了，就那个瞬间，这就是我的生活。 你住在哪儿？你的生活是什么？这就是我的生活，我要做一个来表现我生活的一个表演作品。
But the work that would ultimately launch his career was the one that came next. Titled 65 Kilograms, Zhang Huan suspended himself from the roof of his room for 40 minutes while blood drawn from his body sizzled on a hot plate below.
You know, it was hot like you can't believe. Everybody was just sitting on the floor, and you know, the silence was the thing I remember most. 40 minutes is quite a long time to be suspended. And then the moment that Zhang Huan came down, and he literally just went white, and you know, he had these chains, marks across his body, and I mean, it was extraordinary.
所以那个时候用身体做，我发现了我自己的存在，我发现用身体做，接近我的内心世界。我觉得比绘画、比雕塑、比装置，就是要接近的多，要适合我的多。
张环做的作品呢，如果通俗的讲呢，我们叫做的比较狠，就是说比较偏执，完了比较极端。那么也就是说，张环的作品呢，更多的是对生存环境的一种抗争。
Zhang Huan's performances were highly attuned to the struggles of the working class. This is most apparent in the performance piece Angel, which reflected the grim reality in China in the 1990s, that babies conceived out of wedlock were illegal and routinely aborted. The memories from that period still haunt him even today.
这是在当时的一个特殊历史背景下，我们当时正是年轻人，我几乎每星期都能听到我周边的朋友，谁的女朋友又怀孕了，怀孕怎么办？那么年轻，我们没有钱，我们没有。那个时候没办法，我们的孩子不能要。 所以，才有了这样的作品。
Zhang Huan was gaining prominence as an artist. However, his bizarre performances didn't always go down well with his peers and the public, confining him to the fringes of the Beijing art scene. Not satisfied with being labelled as a misfit, he was to look elsewhere for greener pastures.
在冬春的时候，北京8年，想想是我最疯狂的时候。同时呢，我还没有成为一个艺术家，或者说我还没有被接受。 被大众、被艺术世界接受，大家只知道这是一个疯子，不会画画，在这边瞎胡混，就是完全是这种状态下，我想去纽约，去，最后再闯一把。
Coming up, a look at Zhang Huan's time in New York and its impact on his artistic direction. Zhang Huan, a Chinese performance artist famous for his outlandish feats and death-defying displays, left China in 1998 to try his luck in New York, the heart of the contemporary art world.
So he settled in New York, and he very quickly figured out the game of kind of being an exotic other artist in New York. So he was, for a number of years, doing these performances similar to the ones he'd been doing in Beijing, often incorporating his naked body, engaging in this kind of like naked be-in sort of modality with other performers kind of sourced locally.
我做的第一个表演，在 PS1， 我用西藏的朝圣的方式做了一个朝圣纽约的风和水。 做的在一个冰床上，我在那儿用了美国在纽约的这些博物馆的朋友家里的狗。
Zhang Huan's leap of faith to go to New York paid off handsomely. Pilgrimage Wind and Water in New York was a critical success, propelling Zhang Huan into the limelight and gaining a momentum that would place him on the international stage. Embarking on the My series of performance pieces, Zhang Huan would leave his mark across the globe, from Australia to Japan.
，my 就是 central， 就是我是一个中心，我所到之处，你们对于我中心来讲，你们是一个 local， 我要把这个中心的和 local 的建立一个新的一种关系，叫 global， 也就是我心中的 global。我把这两个文化，我身上我血液里边我带着的原来的中国的这些血液、这些文化、这些想法呢，跟当地的文化一下子就把它凝在了一起，就产生了一系列的10来年的这个My的系列。
A defining performance from the My series was My New York in 2002. Wearing a suit made out of fresh cuts of meat, Zhang Huan walked down New York's Fifth Avenue releasing doves, a symbol of peace made more poignant with the 9/11 tragedy still fresh in people's minds.
He, as an artist, he's always been himself. You know, the body, the performance, and he has a strength of character within that sort of, you know, the essence is him. It's what he does in his work. And I think that's why the early works still today, the performance pieces he did in the 90s and right through to the early 2000s when he was living in New York, these pieces still resonate because it is him, you know, and he has this, whether it's his gaze, his own personal presence, but it is Zhang Huan that is the artist.
Zhang Huan has attained cult status in the global contemporary art world. But he soon realized that just creating performance art was not going to be sustainable in the long run.
其实我在纽约，就是可选择的更少，因为这片土地、这个城市、这个文化、这个语言，这所有的都跟我没关系。我是一个游客，我是一个逃难的人，或者说我是一个美国梦。来美国要赚钱的，要赚到生活费，我要回我的中国，我是这种心态。
One of the issues he was also aware of is that if you go on performing and you have a family to support, actually it's very, very difficult to find ways to, you know, make ends meet. You don't really have anything that's for sale, and that's important for an artist.
Zhang Huan was looking for new avenues to pursue his art, and he realized New York didn't have the answers. So he turned his eye back to China, where his homeland's economic miracle was creating the wealth that was helping develop a taste among the Chinese for contemporary art.
你在美国8年，你几乎看不到什么变化，或者说你看不到让你刺激你的、激发你的，你已经对纽约开始产生厌倦的时候，就这个时候，我们的中国正在天翻覆地的变化着，是全世界的建筑师的一个试验田，没有章法的在建设，瞎求闹，就这么一种状态，它又那么充满了活力。
I think he was confronted with a very intense set of dynamics that all Chinese artists confront at some point in their career, which was kind of how his work is read by an audience that's not familiar with the cultural, historical, socio-political context out of which it grows. But I suppose in the end, he sort of realized that in New York he would always be a Chinese artist, and maybe if he came back to China, he could be an artist.
我做表演艺术，让我对艺术的概念彻底的解放。艺术，身体都能去做艺术，还有什么不能做艺术？
Zhang Huan leaves New York behind and returns to China. Setting up his studio at an old jewelry factory on the outskirts of Shanghai, Zhang Huan now has a base with which to flesh out his artistic visions.
整个的工厂工作室有大概大大小小有20个 building, 20 building. The whole space like 30,000 square meter. For us, I think is great. We can do what we want.
Zhang Huan now takes on a new approach that involves mass production, big factory, large team.
At a certain point, he started to make objects again, where he established really a studio that's almost the measure of all of their studios just because it's so big and almost compartmentalized production. I mean, these days you go there and there's someone on staff at the studio whose job is just to take care of the monkeys.
Zhang Huan's inspirations are now a stark contrast to his past. His recent artworks reveal strong influences from Buddhist imagery and the teachings of the philosopher Confucius.
孔子他很高，从体量上来讲，因为他那么重要，我希望给人深刻，就是前人没有做过的一种对孔子的一种表现。我给他一个特别的一种方式，呈现的这么巨大，让他能看到孔子的每一个毛孔。所以我把孔子放在一个水面里边，那么也就意味着我们从水来，再回到水里。如果孔子今天去马杀鸡，可能需要1年时间，有50个马杀鸡跟他做按摩。
Zhang Huan's new creations are not without their critics.
You know, I think that the scale is a problem with some. I mean, they're so huge. So it's works end up feeling like they're big because they can be big, but without that feeling of the artist's hand, like really directing some of the quality of it.
我几乎不关注外界的评论，我只知道我的 DNA 从来没变过，我只知道张环还是张环，在下一个时间，张环将继续他的新的创作。
After the break, we find out what is currently inspiring Zhang Huan by exploring his latest creations. With a career spanning 2 decades and a multitude of mediums, Zhang Huan has shocked and baffled fans and critics alike with his provocative artworks. Always the consummate innovator, Zhang Huan pioneered the use of incense ash as an artistic medium. The ash is collected from temples around Shanghai. He lets us in on the intricacies of creating an ash painting and the reasons this material is so close to his heart.
我们看到的就是现在这仅仅是我们的香灰材料中的一部分，或者说是1/10。我们如果把香灰的这个类分别出来，可能分100种这个颜色。香灰这个材料，它是对我来讲，它不是材料，它是中国人的一个集体的这个国家的记忆。香灰啊，它是一个民族的一个集体的一个祝福，是一个国家的一个灵魂的聚集。
Zhang Huan's latest ash work is a replica of a photo he found in an antiques market. It depicts a rare portrait of China's most important leaders in its modern history, who gathered to witness a landmark exercise between the Beijing and Jinan province military corps.
We did this ash painting for 5 years. More than 10 assistants helped me, with me, we working together. You can see the size is most 40 meter. Close 40 meters. You can see, yeah. This, the center of the guy is the famous, everybody know him, is Mao.
You see a lot of desire to believe in something that one can no longer believe in, I think, running through so much of what he makes. Especially recently, I mean, you think about these paintings made from ash, they're deeply cynical in a way. And he turns it into these images of dictators or panoramas of labor, historical photographs. I think there's a question that he's looking at that a lot of artists in China look at, which is just what to make of this massive history of effort and failure and adaptation and ultimately of loss.
Zhang Huan has since involved himself with other ventures, like his debut as the director of the opera piece Semele. Currently, he's turning his attention to interior design, creating a jewelry store from the ground up.
我们看到的这个空间是工作室最大的空间，专门做大项目，超体量的这样的项目在这个空间做。这个项目是诚信钻石机构的品牌在中国是最大的钻石品牌。
小小那个不要裁判的，对，我觉得要不是方的，三角的，跟咱们这个形啊不太协调，太冲了，太冲了。
The project is a multi-million-dollar corporate commission and his biggest undertaking so far. So does Zhang Huan think he's selling out?
他说，如果李总没有给这么大的自由，要求你实现他的想法的话，你还会接受这个要求？
不会，绝对不会。除非他让我长生不老。
Zhang Huan rose to fame on the back of controversy and remains an artist who regularly divides opinion. Flavors change in the blink of an eye in the art world, and even veterans like him can only make calculated punts. What is a sure bet, though, is Zhang Huan's legacy in shaping contemporary art in China, and that he will continue to have a role in mapping its future.
Zhang Huan is extremely important for the Chinese community and the public because he is actually the one standing out there telling people not to be afraid of performance art and telling young people, parents, journalists to look at our body, to think beyond canvas.
He absolutely has a place in the history of contemporary art in China. As a pioneering performer, as a really innovative thinker about how to make images from those performances. In a way, he's the beginning of a new generation, right? He's really the first artist to attain that level of renown.
艺术是艺术家的附体，跟艺术家整个的这个完整的这个一生，就是做了那么多作品，其实都是艺术家的一生的一个附体。今天的创作，我的灵感依然从我的这片土地，从我的生活出发，这是永远离不开的。那么我们用的媒介呢，几乎我们把艺术世界能用到的这些种类，我们都在做一种全新的试验。